Okay, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what is happening right now in our world. Okay, I'm going to break it down in very simple terms. In my last video, I discussed how we as individual souls are processing the emotion of fear. And this, what I'm about to explain, I believe, is one of the most important subjects that we can understand in our generation, wherever you are, anywhere on the planet, okay? So, right now, this is about how we, as a species, are allocating resources throughout our world. And we all understand that there are plenty of places in the world that are doing exceptionally well, and there is plenty of abundance. And then there are places that are lacking, and there's starvation and hunger. And I'm going to put this all into perspective, and I'm going to explain how it doesn't always have to be this way. And I am thoroughly convinced that it's going to come to an end. But as a species, it is up to us to decide whether we're going to end this or not. And all the debates that we have, all the political debates, all the debates of capitalism and socialism and all that stuff, how we're going to allocate resources, it all stems from what I'm about to explain right now. Again, I apologize for the lighting. I plan on doing something about that in the future. So first, what I want to do is I want us to think about our planet, Earth. I want us to think about it as an island, okay? So we all are on this island together as human beings, and we have limited resources, okay? Different people are capable of different tasks. Certain people are capable of building shelter. Certain people are much better able at fishing. We all have different roles that we are playing while we are on this island, okay? And we are also all, as individuals, members of a greater organism that is known as humanity. So we are all connected in that sense. So what is happening, as I explained in another video, is we are in the process, humanity now has mastered its survival in its environment. We as the species, as humans, we've mastered our survival. Okay? And if you look at the animal kingdom, and if you look at the hierarchy, if you want to think of it in those terms, it's a word a lot of people don't like, but hierarchy exists everywhere in all systems. There are different degrees of fear involved with survival. Fear is what drives and motivates organisms to survive. Okay? Now we as a species, as I explained in a previous video, we as a species are literally in the process of outgrowing the emotion of fear. Why? Because we have mastered our survival. We're not going to be getting rid of fear anytime soon. What I'm saying is we are outgrowing the emotion of fear, and through that process, all these other things are occurring, and I'll explain how that's happening. So, because we are experiencing fear, what we are trying to do, each as individuals, is we want to take care of ourselves for our own survival, and we also want to take care of our brothers and sisters, those people who we identify with, those people who are closest to us, our kin, our nation, people of our religious community. We want them taken care of. And oftentimes our politics are going to reflect the need for our brothers and sisters to be taken care of. So, certain people on this island have acquired control of most of the resources. Now, this is a point, and I'm Dr. Jordan Peterson, a Canadian psychologist, clinical psychologist. He brought this to my attention, and there's also another phenomenon that people refer to this as the 80-20 rule, and I'm not going to get into the math behind it, but there's a legitimate there's a legitimate phenomenon that occurs where it's called the Pareto distribution, and it doesn't matter if it's a socialist, communist, capitalist system. It does not matter. It works in all systems, and what happens is the resources go to a tiny minority of people at the top of the system. It's called the Pareto distribution is, I believe, what Dr. Peterson called it. There's an 80-20 rule with some legitimate math behind it based off of who's going to control means of productions and things like that. So in a communist country, I want people to understand that in a communist and socialist countries, by no means is this problem solved. As a matter of fact, in most cases, it's worse. Okay, so it's not necessarily the answer. Okay, but again, that's getting into more politics. I actually don't want to do that. So because of this fear, we have developed something called tribalism. Like I was talking about earlier, we want the members of our group to survive. We love them. We identify with them. And we, perhaps more or less selfish individuals, want our own needs met, and we want those closest around us, their needs met. Those who view themselves more egalitarian, they want everybody's needs met, right? And I think at the end of the day, the vast majority of people, they want everybody's needs met. The reason that we have all these disagreements about how to allocate resources is because we disagree on the best way to allocate resources, or whether it is even possible to allocate resources without the members of our group having to suffer. Okay? So because of fear, and because we are trying to survive in our environment, we have developed tribalism, nationalism, whatever you want to call it. None of the words that I use am I intending to have any positive or negative connotation. That's not what I want to do here. So we have developed tribalism as a means of survival. And because of this, there is war and there is hunger. There is a type of competition that is not healthy. Again, I don't want there to be positive or negative connotation with the word competition, okay? But it creates an unhealthy competition to where we are literally killing other groups of people, protecting ourselves from other groups of people, allowing other groups to starve. Not necessarily is this done out of malice. This is done because of fear. Okay? We are afraid for ourselves, and we are afraid for those who we love, our group identity. We want those people to be taken care of. So there is war and hunger. Now on this island, on this planet Earth, on this island, those who control the resources, okay, those who are at the top of the hierarchy in this organism known as humanity, who have the greatest control over resources, they are fed. They are the ones on this island who are fed. They are the fed, okay? They are, in the United States, the Federal Reserve is the central bank, not only of the United States, it is the central bank of the world. The reason for that is because the world reserve currency right now is United States dollars, okay? So the Fed's policies affect these things right here, war and hunger. The Fed, those who are fed, have had more influence than any other group of people in determining these things, war and hunger. Now, you have people who, there's always people who are up in arms, and they're going to argue the evil or the not evil of the matter of the situation. This is the way, this is how it has unfolded, okay? This is simply the nature of how it is. Right, wrong, or indifferent, this is how it is. So, before the creation of the Fed, all right, in 1913, and by the way, the Federal Reserve Act was passed, I believe, on Christmas in 1913, so people wouldn't really pay attention to it happening. Anyway, before the Fed, the world reserve currency was gold, internationally recognized. The reason for this, the reason that it was gold, was because of the properties of gold. So gold is easily recognizable. It is scarce. All these properties that make it good quality money, a good store of value. Okay? A store of value for one's own labor. And the word labor is very important because I want us to keep in mind part of the reason many people go to work, even in first world countries, will go to work. They don't want to go to work. So why are they going to work? They are going to work, and we are exchanging a significant amount of our time in exchange for survival, in exchange for money, resources, okay? And the currency that we receive in exchange for our labor is controlled by the Fed. The Fed control the currency, all right? And you can argue whether or not they are greedy. Perhaps in their own way, they are allocating resources as best and as most and in the most practical way that they see possible. Okay? Perhaps. I'm just saying, I want to state this is the nature of how things are. So we are exchanging a lot of our time on this island. We no longer have to spend as much time as we once did on survival. Okay? But we are still exchanging much of our time in exchange for survival, exchange for comfort, higher living standards. But we are transitioning into a period where we're not going to have to exchange as much of our time for survival. As we master our environment, as we evolve, and as the world becomes more connected, that's going to be less of the case. So gold was the reserve currency. The Fed controlled the gold supply. The Federal Reserve controlled the gold supply. Most of Europe's gold, the gold that was in the United States, most of the world's gold at the beginning of the 20th century ended up at the Fed. And the Fed issued United States dollars, and these dollars around the world were recognized as the world reserve currency because the paper is much more convenient than shipping gold around. Gold, up until that time, was a great store of value. There were other stores of value in currencies throughout time. There were seashells, salt, cattle, many different ways that people exchanged. Gold became universally recognized because it had the best properties of money for that time. Then what happened in 1971, the United States ended the gold standard for the US dollar. So the United States dollar was no longer backed by gold. So gold was no longer the world reserve currency, US dollars were, which put the Fed, who was in control of the money supply, it put the Fed, it gave much more flexibility to the Fed. And it gave them the ability to implement a form of economics that I don't want to get into, but a form of economics that they perceived allowed them to allocate resources better, grow the economy faster, and do things like that. The positive negative consequences of that, that's for another time. So the currency became the US dollars. What happened in the 1970s, because the dollar was not backed by any commodity that there was a demand for all around the world, this all happened under Richard Nixon's administration. Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger negotiated a deal with Saudi Arabia, and among the leading oil-producing nations of the world, essentially. This is what was negotiated. And the Saudis agreed that they would only accept US dollars in exchange for oil. Oil became the new commodity. Energy, okay? And what this did was this created an artificial demand for US dollars all around the world. Because if a country wanted to purchase oil, they needed to use US dollars. So there is now a demand for US dollars, which allowed it to remain the reserve currency, even though it was no longer backed by this commodity known as gold, it was now backed by this commodity known as oil. And yes, it has a lot to do with why we went to war with Iraq and war with Libya. I'm not going to go into all the details, okay? I'm not going to get into conspiracy stuff and whatnot, but our currency provides a certain level of global stability, arguably. All right. One thing I also want to note, I find in many cases, people tend to believe that they are doing the right thing, even when from other people's perspectives it seems like they're doing the complete wrong thing. Again, I will talk on that. So, oil became the commodity. We are now in a time where we are transitioning. We are in an energy transition. Oil is no longer going to be the lifeblood of the world economy anymore. It's not. It's going to be electricity, and I will explain. Now, this is why I put a very high emphasis on free speech and on the First Amendment, because what I'm about to say, even in the United States, there would be people so warped in the head that would want to throw me in prison for what I'm about to say. So I have to be careful. And because of fear, we have made some bold moves in the past 20 years. And by no means do I want what I'm about to say to be taken out of context. But I'm going to say it anyway. The reason for much of the terrorism that occurred, okay, I'm going to say right now, it's a very obvious statement, but I am very much against murdering of innocent people. I'm not for it, and just like everybody else, I was heartbroken on September 11th, 2001, okay? I was heartbroken just like everybody else, so do not misinterpret what I am saying. What I am saying is, certain terrorists who are very, very educated on what is going on here, not necessarily those working beneath them at the bottom of their pyramids, certain members who I will not mention their names, but you've heard their names, what they perceive is they see their brothers and sisters going hungry, and they understand this system. So in their mind, what they are suffering, like we all are, from their own version of fear. These are the people who do not control the resources, and their tribe, their brothers and sisters, are living in tough conditions. Whether or not they are victims of this system or not is not what I am saying. That is their reality. And they are experiencing hunger. So certain people, very, very, very wealthy people, who engaged in certain acts, horrendous acts, their concern and the reason for their hatred, if you will, if that's how you want to look at it, is because they see their brothers and sisters going hungry. They are suffering from this thing called tribalism. Tribalism that is out of control. Okay? And it exists. It is a part of human nature. And balancing group identity and individual identity is one of the most important balancing acts that the Western world has tried to master. And in my personal opinion, and being a Westerner, somebody who grew up in the West, I believe that the Western world has gotten it down better than any other place on earth, and that is why we have been so financially successful and we have been so abundant. Okay? Right, wrong, or indifferent. So, all of the wars, the poverty, the hunger, I'm telling you, it's all because we are afraid. We were trying to master our survival in our environment. We are now in a time where we are transitioning. The dollar is going away. The dollar system is crashing. That's another video. I don't want to make this one too long. The dollar system is coming to an end. There's a reason that During the Obama administration, the Saudi government threatened to dump U.S. treasuries if Obama did not veto legislation that would allow American families to sue individuals for damages that had to do with the September 11 attacks. And he did veto it. And it was overridden by Congress. But the Saudis, they understand that if they dump U.S. treasuries, we are in a very vulnerable situation now. We do not have, our currency is not as strong as it once was. And I don't mean the strength of the dollar in the financial sense. The system is not strong anymore. And there have been people trying to circumvent this system. Saddam Hussein actually tried to circumvent the system. Muammar Gaddafi, he tried to circumvent the system also. He actually, I believe he was trying to implement a gold standard for Africa. All right? All I can say is, look how it turned out for them. We are afraid. We are all trying to maintain resources for our tribe, for our brothers and sisters, because we want our brothers and sisters to be fed. And they will be. Because now, the new currency, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, it's powered by electricity. And right now, miners are rewarded financially for processing transactions. Okay? But the new currency, which is better than gold, is now Bitcoin. And he who is able to come up with the most renewable, fastest, cheapest energy is going to become wealthy. This is the free market doing what it does best. We are transitioning at lightning speed. We are accelerating. 30 years ago, the internet didn't exist. We didn't have internet. We didn't have computers. We weren't connected in the way that we are now. We are accelerating at a very fast pace. We are experiencing a revolution in currency, in technology, in how we communicate with one another. I can get on the internet and I can interact with people in Hong Kong. I can interact with people in Great Britain, and we can exchange information like we've never been able to do before. We will master our survival. We have the ability to do it. We have the ability for all of our brothers and sisters on this planet to be fed. All of them to no longer be hungry. We have the ability to do that. We should not be afraid. What was happening is we are mastering our environment. We are mastering survival in our environment. That is what's happening right now. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We are figuring out a way to where we don't have to exchange so much of our time for survival. We are in revolutionary times, and the pace at which things are changing is exponential right now. So I want to elaborate on these topics later, but I wanted to give a rough overview of what's happening. You have those on the island who are fed, and you have those who are hungry, and you have all the tribalism and everything in between. And at the end of the day, we are all trying to make sure that our brothers and sisters don't go hungry. Fear not, because we will figure it out.